Big time.
It's the big time.
Big time.
The big time.
Big time.
The big time.
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 Big time. Big time.
It's the big time.
Big time. Big time.
The big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time. Big time.
She said to me, she says, you have such a pretty face. Do you enjoy being fat? I said, I worked very hard at it. It took me a long time to get this way.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
The big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Big time.
It's the big time.
Big time.
The big time.
Big time.
The big time.
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 Big time. Big time.
It's the big time.
Big time. Big time.
The big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
The big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Hello! Hi, everybody. Oh my god, that was way extreme of a hello.
We're very excited. Can you tell?
Like, I started that at a 10 instead of like a 7.
No, it's good. It's good.
There's nowhere to go
You
from
were at
here.
a 10, and we want you at like a 10.5 to 11.5. So I
Sure.
feel like you're right in there, like
Thank you.
right in the pocket. It's really good.
The pocket. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Big Time. I am one of your hosts, Dara Feynman. We have Ashlie Atkinson, and we have a very awesome guest today. And I think that we won't even talk extreme hello. Leon is like
Right.
in it today. As always,
Yes!
we should thank Leon for the fabulous theme song, which,
Yep.
quite frankly, just
Beyonce.
gives me sheer amounts of joy to the point where I start singing my own theme song for fun. I think
Yeah,
I
you can
really
check out his music on SoundCloud at Grapefruit45 or
Yeah.
also on the YouTubes. He also makes very cool videos to accompany them that are pretty
I'm pretty
awesome.
sure that I started the co-op because I wanted a theme song. So I can stop now. We did it.
And now you got right, and so bye. No, actually, today we have like a stupid exciting guest.
Yes.
We've got Allie Barthwell with us today. I am so excited that she's joining us. She is a friend of Dara's and is a badass writer, performer, Wellesley woman, steak lover. Her writing, I've been following her recaps of The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise, a lot of the Real Housewives franchise. In Vulture, she writes for the AV Club. She was on Netflix's Easy and with my friend Lindsay Burge and Win It All and the Huffington Post Here to Make Friends. She toured with Second City, which is why my friends in Chicago were like, "Oh, Allie from Second City," and I was like, "Oh, you know her?" And they were like, "No, but I mean, we have mutual friends." And I was like, "Oh, she's." Anyway, she was a recipient of the Puma LOL Diversity Scholarship and a member of the inaugural Bob Curry Fellowship at Second City. In 2017, she performed on the JoJo Cruise. In 2018, she founded WakandaCon, which is a one-of-a-kind fan convention celebrating Afrofuturism in pop culture, gaming, and tech. Over 2,000 people come, over 170 panelists. Super exciting. And as of I think this July, she became a writer on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Please welcome to Big Time, Allie Barthwell, everybody.
Hi, Allie. You're on the screen. I told you I'd warn you.
Hi.
You're visible.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
You
You
really
like my
did
cobbled together of your LinkedIn
really
biography
did
from
pull a
2017.
full LinkedIn biography.
I'm extremely impressed every time Ashlie shows her acting skills or like I know she's a good actress, but every time Ashlie does it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what she does for a job.
Oh, that I just read stuff off a piece of paper and pretend like I thought of it.
Just occurred to me in
It
2018.
just occurred to me. She was also on the JoJo cruise in 2017.
Yeah, wait.
That's
So the
something that
JoJo, I need to go back to the JoJo cruise. Like
Oh wait,
JoJo.
no, it's the Joko cruise.
Oh, the JoCo
Oh.
cruise. I was like JoJo Siwa?
yeah,
Do we need to have a
somebody
conversation about my new
did.
favorite
It was-
queer icon?
It was like Jonathan Colton. He's a musician. He has this like
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
nerd culture cruise, and so I also was a writer for Cards Against Humanity for a couple years, and one year they had us as a sponsor on the like Joko cruise, so they finagled it that a bunch of us got to go and perform improv. There's a Cards Against Humanity improv show. So I did improv on a cruise ship for nerds, and I'm talking like 3 levels deep nerds, and it was a fully wild experience.
That sounds
That
incredible.
was-
I also feel like this is the moment that Dara's about to show you her tattoo of the Starship Enterprise on her body.
I think you must have. So to shout out Devin, thank you. We have this
Yeah.
great connection because my best friend is a mutual of ours, and Devin and I got our Star Trek tattoos together.
Yes.
But right before she moved back to LA after she left me in New York. So I
Yeah.
guess I could do it. Who cares? I wasn't going to, but now I'm going to.
Yeah.
Can you even see it? I don't know how I show you a tattoo.
Oh,
There
hell
it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I really like
So, Allie-
starships.
What are your nerd genres? Like, where do you intersect?
So I'm nerdy with the MCU, so the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Same.
I was a theater nerd and like a speech team nerd as a kid in high school, and then pretty okay like comedy nerd, obviously. But so the people on this cruise, I'm also like I'm like a board game nerd. I'm a light video game. I like video games, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, I like this, but I'm not like a nerd about it. And this was like people that were like, oh, I only do like LARPing of this one book that no one's ever heard of. Like everything that was like on the schedule for the day, I was like, I've never heard of this thing. It's like it's a poet, and we're all like into this weird poet that writes like poems about video game characters. Like it was all just like when you say like, oh, nerd shit, I'm like, I can do that. I can hang in nerd circles.
Right.
Like, okay, I was friends with the marching band, and I went to the Japanese superstore on the weekends. Like, I can hang, but these people were like, it was too specific, too niche, that I was like, I have no entry point into this.
Right. It's like I can do mass market nerd.
Yeah. And it was like, it was the kind of thing where like when you showed up for the cruise, they gave everyone a ukulele. Like that.
The chat just said I would say let's do a Rupi Kaur LARPing, but that's literally just going to therapy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie.
Just, like would love.
Wait, they
like,
gave you a ukulele?
They gave everyone a ukulele. And so I was like, how am I supposed to get this off the ship? Like, what am I have luggage. Like, what am I supposed to do? So it was just, but it was everything was like that. The best was they made buttons or like a little thing that you could say like, talk to me, don't talk to me, like approach me with caution, like green, yellow, red, which is like fun. Great. I get it.
That's really cool. I've never even heard of that.
So it was like, you could, at the beginning of the day, you could put your green button on if like, I'm hanging out with people, or you could put your red button on if like, I want to eat lunch by myself. But it became a thing where this was the one time of year for these nerds to socialize that it became like socially unacceptable to have like a red button.
Right.
So I was like, this is useless.
Right. You're like, I'm being policed on my red buttonness.
Yeah, I can't. And I was like, I don't want to talk. I was like, it was that thing where it was like, there were like 4 Black people on this whole cruise. So I was like, I don't want to deal with anybody. Like, this is not my location, and I'm trapped on this location.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't get away. That's the one thing about a cruise is like that's where you are.
Yeah. So I was like,
somebody like did somebody say something to you about like it's not like, did they actively try to police your button wearing?
well, it just became like, so they had like a little app where you could like,
of course
say like, hey, I'm going to the soccer field, like who wants to go play? And there was like a thread of like people being like, I feel weird when people have a red button. Like, what do I do if someone has a yellow button on? Like, how do you approach it? Like it was a bunch of people that was like, this was their time to be like, I'm gonna go on this nerd cruise, I'm gonna make a ukulele friend, and I will thrive. And so the idea that like other people, it was like it didn't work that someone would be like, I need the afternoon to myself, because the whole thing was like, this is the one time that you're gonna meet people like on your level.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just became, and it like, these are also people that adults, all adults. And there was a thread on that little app where they were like, we're not getting enough towel animals in our room. Like, you know how the ship people don't make like a little monkey or like a little swan. They were like, we're not getting enough towel animals. Like, we want the towel animals. I was like, we're grown-ups. We're adults.
Right.
You're just going to
And-
take it apart to use your towel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and people who are paid like probably not enough are like cleaning your rooms and don't really have time to make towel animals for you.
So then it
I
became
will
this, like,
say-
weird
Every-
one-upsmanship of like who got the best towel animal. Like it
Oh
was
my
just
God.
people being like, "This is my one time a year for fun."
How many
And
towel animals
I
are
would love to
enough?
have fun.
I was on a cruise for my mother's birthday, and they put a full towel man in the room.
No,
And we were inebriated. And we walked in to see a towel man sitting on the toilet, and it was the end
No.
of our life.
no.
No.
He was sitting on the toilet?
Yeah, like they had him, it was like 5 towels to make like a man.
don't
He was
want
wearing
that.
a life vest, and he was sat on the toilet. So we walked into our room. We were very drunk. And it was very scary.
That's terrifying.
It was-
That's the worst idea.
Terrifying.
That's like I don't say this very often. That is like bona fide triggering. I'm sorry. Like to
That
like
is
look
a-
at
that is a
walk into your
crime.
bathroom and there's a and you know those towels were white. The towels are always white because they bleach out the easiest.
So it's
There's
either,
just like
it's
a white,
either
a
ghost,
full-size white towel man.
Yes, it was like a
Either a
ghost.
ghost
It looked
or
like
a
they.
white-
Either way is not a thing I really was planning to walk into my room from not having anyone
No.
in my room.
No, that's a crime.
It was a
That should
crime.
be investigated.
Yeah, for sure.
The pictures we
100%.
took, though, when we realized what had happened,
That's hideous.
it was a choice. I mean, I'm impressed at the artistry of the.
Yeah.
You know what I didn't
It's
think
a
we were going to talk
commitment.
about on this show is towel art on cruises, but I'm not mad at it.
They
I'm-
committed to the bit, and that's all. You know, at a certain
Yeah,
point, you gotta
it's
give
true.
them a hand.
I wonder how bored
But
you
you know
have to
what?
be to be
It's
like,
like
I'm going
it's
to
your
make a
First
full
Amendment
cruise.
right to make a man out of towels and put him on the toilet. But there are consequences to you exercising your First Amendment
But maybe
right.
they had to start doing that because people were complaining on the app about it.
The one-upsmanship of the towel, and then it was like, put the little sunglasses on the towel animal.
Mhm.
Maybe
He
your
was wearing
towel animal's,
sunglasses.
like holding your little bag. Like it's too much.
It's too much. Like,
That's yeah. I mean, I don't want to make snap judgments about a whole cruise full of people.
But I was there. It was not a snap judgment. This was based in fact and reality.
Yeah.
oh my God.
And like I'm like, and I've talked about it with my brothers so much because I just kept texting them, being like, "Get me off this boat." But it's like, there's so little in my life that I would want to be like. I have to go on a week-long cruise dedicated to this thing. Like, there's a lot of things I really like, but I'm like, do I want to go on a cruise where every activity is this thing? Like, maybe I don't love hard enough. Like, maybe I don't believe, but it was a lot.
Right. Right. I think tempered enthusiasm is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know.
when I pitch the co-op to people, I do have to be like, can you talk about this for 6 hours?
Right.
So like, I don't ever want to temper someone's excitement level. Like, that's not a thing I love doing, but also,
Yeah, it's like these people were having the time of their lives. This was
No one was going to stop them.
this was their thing for the year. But
but
I was
how
like, this
dare
is
you
not
put the
my
red button
thing.
on?
Right. Right. I'm here to do the thing. And yeah, that's
Yeah, you're
I'm
there to
here for the
work.
free vacation. I'm on a work trip.
right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh.
Speaking of untempered enthusiasm, I have to say that I am feeling a little guilty this evening because we also have a Bachelor themed show.
Yes, I've
Um,
heard.
and it is fantastic. A like intersectional feminist take on The Bachelor. And I have been reading your recaps and I'm like, I really love that we have you, but I feel like really that every rose has its thorn should probably have had you because your recaps are dynamite, especially
Thank you so much.
the most recent stuff talking about sort of the policing of thought around Rachel Lindsay and around Rachel from 2018 and Chris Harrison's stupid comments. I just think that stuff is really fascinating. So I just want to apologize that we're not that show.
That's okay. That is okay.
Sorry.
How do you feel about how this is?
and
So he's
Stacey.
stepping back. What do you think now?
Yeah, I mean, I think what is so like fully wild is the breadcrumbs were there that there were issues with the franchise, and what seems to happen is every person of color that goes through that system comes out on the other side worse for the wear. Even like Rachel Lindsay has said, she's like, The Bachelor is a great thing. The Bachelorette's a great thing in my life. It gave me my husband. Like, it gave me something truly wonderful and all these opportunities. But they're coming out on the other side victims of, there's racist attacks online. There's all this criticism. They get edited into this horrible way. And so, you know, there's something happening fundamental in the DNA of the show. And that is something fundamental in the DNA of like a lot of television, that the people of color that go through it come out on the other side worse for the wear. And the thing with Chris Harrison stepping back is he's an executive producer. So he might be stepping back from his hosting duties, but is he stepping back from the money he's about to get? Is he stepping back from the creative decisions that he's allowed to make? You know, and you see on the show just like how much he's there. Like, he's the one person that the lead can talk to. So is he going to deal with and think about like, how have I interacted with, you know, Tasha, Rachel Lindsay, Matt James, and how have I like given them advice or counseled them or viewed them in a way that is like harmful, you know? And I think
Right.
that's also the other thing of, because of my recaps, and people will reach out to me or tweet at me or comment, and they're like, it's just a dating show. It's just a dating show. Like, why do you have to see this in it? It's not this, the thing that you're seeing isn't there, or this conversation that you want to have isn't important. And with media is a reflection of us. Like, we create the media. So like what the values of people are end up being what is given out through the media. But then also the media teaches you how to move through the world. So when you watch like a rom-com, you're learning lessons about what romance should look like. And that's a reason why people might name certain movies or certain TV shows of like, oh, I want a romance like The Notebook. I want a romance like Jim and Pam. So, you know, they're trying to emulate these things. And so if you have something that is a huge show about dating and romance, about dating and sex and love and all these things, and it's from a white gaze, they're using white supremacist tools to push people through this thing, like, people that watch it are gonna absorb something. And so it should be like, I would hope that there would be some consciousness on the people that create the show to stop and say, you know, we're making something here that people are going to consume. Let's have it be healthy. Like, we want the people of color that go through our show to be happy so they come back and promote us. Like, even if you're purely capitalistic, it's like, don't you want to keep the people happy so they'll come back and make you more money, or
Right.
they'll recommend their friends to be on the show? All this different stuff. So I you know, it's one of those things where I care a lot about it because now it's a huge part of my life, and I never watched the show before I started recapping it. Like, I've learned all this stuff about it. But you know, it's a place where people are vulnerable. It's a place where people, you know, someone in the chat is like, it's a place where people work. Like, you want to make a healthy, safe workplace. You want to make a healthy, safe place for people to meet and date, because it's important that people are safe when they're doing all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk a lot on this show about how what we watch on television is the way that America speaks to itself about its changing social values, right? Like, but then what does, you know, this is a show about fatness and pop culture, and of course fatness is like a leg of white supremacy, right? Anti-fatness is a white supremacist viewpoint. But then what is it like recapping shows where fatness as an identity, or even as like a benign body variation, is non-existent?
It's just, it's funny because so many of the things that are romantic tropes that I see on the show and in other stuff require a skinny bitch. Like it just requires a skinny bitch also in the conversation. So I always talk about like the run and jump and wrap their legs around him.
The
like,
carry over the threshold.
Carry over the threshold. All these things like to pull, to go into the pool and be in a bikini on a non-bikini date. Like we're gonna paint, but put body paint on and roll around. Like as a fat person, I've never really had a boyfriend that could pick me up. Like I can maybe get a couple inches off the ground, but I've never been like thrown over someone's shoulder. I've never like jumped and wrapped my legs around somebody. And I've dated people of all sizes too. Like I've not just dated thin guys or average sort of sized guys. And so you watch these things and you sort of get the message of like, well, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. This one thing that is sexy or cute, it's not for me. You look at just thinking about like if I had to be in a bikini at a pool party with a bunch of people, like it's something that you can't hide, you can't like get around it. So it's like it's an instant, in a situation like that, it's an instant liability. It's like something to talk about, something to think about. And on these shows they, my brothers and I joke about like your tragic backstory. And so it's like, I know if I was the only fat person that was a contestant, that would be my tragic backstory.
Your whole storyline would be because you were fat.
My whole storyline would be I'm fat. Or, you see when people have storylines where they lost a lot of weight, or a family member lost a lot of weight, or a family member is sick because they're overweight or whatever. So you just get the message of like, this thing about you that is just like a fact about your person has to be explained. It's either not here or you have to explain it, or like there's just certain stuff that's just not going to be for you. So you're watching it kind of thinking like there's no space in the show for a fat person that doesn't want to explain that they're fat.
I don't think I've ever seen a fat person really on a dating show on any of them.
I mean, The Circle had one, but that's not really a dating show.
It's not really a dating. Like,
and
put me on a dating show,
had
cowards.
To lie about who she was.
Right.
I still say, put me on a dating show, you cowards.
Yeah. I think there's like, if part of the show is that there's like a freakish element, like
Beauty and the Geek,
like Beauty and the Geek, or like maybe I haven't seen all of but like Love at First Sight or Married at First Sight, like those kind of things. And because I feel like there was maybe one woman on the Netflix one where they're
I watched Love at First Sight. I don't remember anyone having like anybody being
I feel like there was one person in like that was one of the contestants that didn't get picked.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Like because there were people that they just like didn't show because they like didn't match. But I feel like if part of the thing is like something here is freakish, like we're breaking the dating script, we could probably insert a fat person. But The Bachelor is the most like heteronormative, skinny, white, cisgender, wedding industrial complex show that there is. It's one of the only ones that's kind of like remained.
And if they did put a big plus size person on the show, they'd be funny. Like that'd be their thing.
Oh yeah. They couldn't be sexy.
No, they'd be like the funny one.
The funny girl. And there's always, and on the show, there's always a couple people that it's like, I'm a friend with you, like you can tell the lead maybe isn't attracted to them, but they like them a lot. And it's comforting to have like a nice person around. I could see the fat person like falling into that really easily, being like, I really like you. You're a great friend, but I'm not attracted to you. And so like, do you want to put a fat person through that? I don't know. And like, there are a lot of people that date fat people. You'd think one person would be like, hey, give me even just like a small fat. Like there's not, I can't even think of someone that's like a small fat that's been on the show since I've been watching at least,
No, me neither. I don't know if there's been anybody over a size 10.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, I don't think so. Do the housewives? I was just going through like the housewives in my brain and thinking like, with the exception of some women who I'm sure don't identify as anything beyond thick.
Right. Yeah.
Whether there's any sort of like identified fat people
I
in
think
any of the housewives.
the only person, but I don't know if she like would call herself fat
Right.
or thick, but like there is a woman on Salt Lake City, Heather, who
I
is
gotta
like,
get on the Salt Lake.
you gotta get on it. But you look at her and you're like, oh, that is a body type I recognize. You know,
Oh, yeah!
and so, you know, small fat, maybe at sort of in that like 10 to 14 size. I also don't know, but like in that, but you look at her and you're like, oh, this is a body I recognize. Like this is a person that I would be friends with and like could see in a day-to-day setting. Whereas like the women that are on The Bachelor, a lot of women that are on The Housewives that are on these kinds of shows, it's like, to me, I don't see that body type in the people that I know. That
Right.
It's like purely idealized, skinny, sexualized, that kind of body. So to
Right.
see even someone that you're like, oh, you're maybe a size 12 and like very tall,
Yeah.
your brain takes a second to be like, boink, like, hello, you're a different thing that I'm looking at.
Right. And I tend to
Boink.
be very aware when, I mean, I feel like I've curated, you're probably the same, but I've curated my Instagram
Oh,
to
absolutely. Yeah.
where
100%,
it's like
you have
almost
to.
entirely fat people. But
Yeah.
but like I get really excited things like how some of those icy park boxes are going out to fat people because now Beyonce has expanded and Adidas have expanded the line to like 3X, 4X sizing, you know. What are your do you hope to get an icy park box on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh my God. I think that would be, I would lose my mind. I would not know how to act or behave if one of those arrived in the convenience store package room at my building. Like I would lose my mind. And I went today and was like looking at stuff and I was like, maybe I'll get one thing, like somebody won't, but it's like, it's also like now I'm like, I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I have no use in my day for a latex bodysuit.
I mean, I don't know. Don't you always have a use for a latex bodysuit?
I can't like show up on the work Zoom with like my titties up in the air.
Oh, you think the Last Week Tonight guys wouldn't like that?
I don't know. That would make them very not thank you.
They would be very uncomfortable.
Because I had a chat where I was like, how would everybody feel if I just wore a silk robe like to work? And they were like, I think everyone would. You would see everyone's brain break to not address it. But like that's where I am in my quarantine journey of like I think I need a full length silk robe.
Oh,
like,
what is it? The they're all over the TikTok. The like
where they're like marabou around the sleeve.
Yeah.
I want one so bad, and I literally see
Forever.
I live alone. Like
Yeah.
it will be
But
me with
to
my
me,
cat.
I'm like, I would also buy that to wear and live alone.
Yeah,
Like,
just like me and my cat living my life. I just be on all of
it's-
these Twitch shows.
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
it's not for anyone but me.
No.
That even like no matter who I'm living, you know, whether I'm living with my husband or whether I'm like on location or whatever, that is for me, that thing.
right. And so I think like I would love just something like that would be. But yeah, to get any kind of to get the Ivy Park.
ugh, a dream.
Also, it just means that like in some way she's thought of you.
Which like even the idea that Beyonce is aware of anyone that's close to me is too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Like it's funny because our Eric Thomas was like, I'm so mad about all these people showing off their icy park, and I'm like, where is my box? And I was like, yes, you should have one, but also like the cheekiness of suggesting that one would deserve.
I would the moment I think I've earned it, I know I haven't deserved it. You know, like the
like-
moment.
She's like Santa in that way. You're like,
Yeah. when we were doing WakandaCon, we sort of had these conversations where we were like, how close to some of these people can we get? Like, are they aware of like? And it sort of became of like, because also we were worried about Marvel. We're like, we don't want to get shut down. But
No.
everyone seems aware of us, and that it's happening, but no one is like addressing it. And so we were like, you know what? That's fine. Like that's great, because also we made the decision too of like, if it becomes about celebrity, then it's like so much logistically has to change. Our mission has to be like, is this person fitting in with like what we want to, which like everyone involved with the film was, but we were like, okay, we have to make some decisions of like who can come and who can't. And we were like, we also just don't want to deal with it.
Right.
And there are people that were like, we really would have loved, but we also like, that was something we bootstrapped. Like we had my older brother for the first one emptied his life savings. Like that was what it was.
Tell us a little about, for the viewers that aren't so familiar with it, tell us a little bit about the genesis of WakandaCon and who all was involved, and the scope of it seems massive.
Ooh,
like
WakandaCon is also throwing our like web captions for a loop.
The captions,
and it's cracking me up. I'm sorry.
Ugh.
It doesn't understand.
So WakandaCon is a pop culture convention, or a fan convention about Afrofuturism in pop culture, gaming, and tech, inspired by the film Black Panther. So my brothers and I went to go see Black Panther, and we saw it between the three of us about 10 times in the theaters. Like we just kept going. And like I said, all of us are nerds. My brothers are video game nerds and, science fiction fantasy nerds. But we all sort of had this feeling of like, oh, this is what the white people that we're friends with that are nerds have been feeling. We were like, if this sense of belonging, community is what white people feel when they see Lord of the Rings, when they sing Star Wars, like y'all have been riding a powerful wave, and like we have just gotten access to it. And so it made us cry. It just became this thing that sort of was like, we had no idea this kind of feeling was possible. So we just wanted to do something, like get a bunch of people together and talk about the film. And we loved this idea of like Wakanda is this place that has never been colonialized. It is, everyone can achieve their full potential. Like it just became sort of this symbol of like what we would want for ourselves and our friends and our family. And like eventually, when we have children, for our kids. And so we were like, okay, let's just like rent a multi-purpose room at a gym, and we'll have some speakers and some whatever. People can sell some stuff. Let's make a website. We'll have people put their email in. If we get 1,000 people put the email in, we'll do it. My older brother's a graphic designer. And so he made this website. It looked really cool. It looked really professional. Within about a week, we had like 10,000 emails on this list. So we were like, oh no. Yeah! People want a thing and they want us to do it. And so I reached out to two women that are friends of mine that both had experience producing events. One was in comedy and runs like a DEI firm, and the other was a event producer and had produced film and corporate gigs and stuff. And so and the conversation went, we're doing this thing called WakandaCon, and they both went, yes. Like no other information, let's do it.
Check, sign on. Yeah.
Check, we're ready. So then we just started to see like what was possible, where we could put it, what we could do. My brothers and I didn't have any experience planning an event of this size. And so we're thinking, if a third of the people come, that's over 3,000 people. We're like, where do we put all these people? So then we found speakers. We reached out to people that were involved in the film. We realized quickly how much it would cost to bring people that had really been involved in the film, and there are people we really wanted to bring, but we were 5 people with our normal day. We were all working a day job. Like, we didn't know what to do. And so we had a marketplace where we had small business owners come and set up a booth. We had like over 170 speakers. We had a cosplay contest. We had We realized someone from our hometown was in the film as a stuntman, so he kind of became our like mascot. We put him in a t-shirt and go hand out flyers and stuff. But so we put this thing, we worked and worked and worked, and we put it together, and the event came, and we had that moment of like, what if we open the doors and no one's here? And it was funny, the weekend of the first one was the same weekend as Lollapalooza. And so the hotel that we got was right across the street from Grant Park in Chicago, where they do Lollapalooza, but they had no events in their event space. So it was super cheap. So we were like, all right, we're going to do it here. But in the lobby, you'd see teens getting off the elevator in daisy crowns and like cutoffs. And then 60-year-old Black women in full African regalia were coming in the lobby. Like it was this really crazy like exchange in the lobby. And so we had little kids in cosplay. We had women in their 60s and 70s that were like, I've never dressed up before. This is fun. And so we put on the first year. It was great. We had a proposal, like someone proposed at the end of the weekend. But we had like 3,000 people come, like close to 3,000 people. We had all these businesses, and there were just so many cool things of like, nobody was an asshole. Nobody was harassing anybody. All of that other bullshit of like being in a convention of like a girl got her booty out because she's in some shorts because she's dressed as somebody cool, and like there was nobody felt uncomfortable. There were little kids and grandmas, and there were just, and my brother, for all these people that wanted to be in the business hall to get the amount of money that we wanted for them to reserve. For some people, it was really hard. Like they'd never presented at a convention. So we had a lot of handshake deals and people being like, I'm going to pay you in installments. I'm going to pay you at the end. And they made so much money, and they were able, like everybody who said like, I'm going to get it to you, got it to us. Like it just was this very cool experience, and we were exhausted, and then we're like, all right, we're going to do it again. And we did it again. And it was the same sort of like, just happy, safe space for people to try something they never tried before or put on a costume for the first time. And it was just this really wild thing to have in our lives. And like obviously last year with coronavirus we couldn't do it, but we were just like, what a wild thing to have done. And so like now my motto is like, it'll get done because it has to, because we didn't know how to do it, but we told 3,000 people we were going to do it, so we figured it out.
That's
Do you feel like your improv background was helpful in that sense? Like, and your sketch work with Second City, like that you had gotten this sense of like of collaboration, mutual aid, this whole sort of thing from that background?
Yeah, it was just sort of this feeling of like, we all have the same goal. We're all marching toward the same goal. So like there are no toes to step on. There's no ego, because we're doing this thing that's bigger than us, and like we all got to bring a brick. So like just bring the brick. And there was this great like spirit from people on the other side being like, we're just here seeing what this is. Like we've never been to something like this. It was a lot of people that had never been to fan conventions. There were a lot of people that had been, white folks that were coming or non-Black people that were coming totally got like, I'm a visitor, I'm a guest, like this is not, and I had friends ask me, they're like, am I allowed to come? And I was like, yeah, sure, I want you to come, this is crazy thing I'm doing. But there was a sense of like, if this space is for y'all, like take your space. And so it just created this, and there's also like a bit of a feeling sometimes when something cool pops up in the Black community, it's like, nobody mess it up so we can have another one. Like we're like, we don't always get stuff, so nobody mess it up. So everybody was just, one of our friends that was a producer with us, she said she like left a bunch of pens on a table, and she came back at the end of the day and like the pens were still there.
Wow.
And so she was like, everybody was just like, this is a thing we all want to happen. We're all going to lift this together. So it just was.
That's just like the thoughtfulness of people writing with pens and then carefully being like, that's where that belongs. Mm-hmm. That's going back in the spot. Yeah, like everybody was just, we were figuring it out, and anybody that we called to say, hey, can you help, came and helped. I think that's really beautiful. And it really strikes me, you talking about sort of what sounds to me like talking to white friends about a lack of translation, right?
Yeah.
Where like this is not going to be translated to apply to your whiteness. Like either you come to it as a visitor or it's not something you should do. And I think a lot about Dara and I talk about a lot about being like fat women who are sort of comedy adjacent, and about how that always feels like a translation, and the tiredness of the idea that women aren't funny, which is still like a thing.
It's a bit of a thing, yeah.
Like still,
But it doesn't
like,
but it doesn't really translate to fat women as much. Like fat women are allowed to be funny because maybe we're not seen as women.
We're not sexy.
Yeah.
is that what it is? Is it because
So like there's like a bunch of whole comedy weird theories of like comedy's basic making someone laugh imbues you with status. Like, and you're signaling in and out crowd too. If I make a joke and a certain group of people laugh, I'm signaling these are my people. And so like those are things that like white men have in other ways also, right? And so comedy requires a certain level of like, I'm signaling that I want status. Whereas like traditionally women usually get status because they are like marriageable. And so if you're like a pretty woman trying to be funny, you're trying to get two kinds of status, right? You're trying to be like marriageable and funny. And so for fat women, we don't have that access to the marriageable thing. So like going after status isn't as threatening because we know the status is only going to go so far. If you're fat and funny, you're not going to be marriageable. So it's fine if we kind of let you have that. And then also the humor that's like acceptable from fat women is about their body, about their fatness, and that same sort of thing of like, it's a liability. I can be self-deprecating. Because even if a fat woman is doing a thing of like, I'm so sexy, I'm so beautiful, I'm so great, it's not read as true, sexy, beautiful, I'm so great. It's ironic.
It's like, oh, look at how funny she is saying that she's hot. Or like,
right,
brave,
which I have a
brave,
lot of
like,
yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that, especially like our first episode had a lot of like we were talking a lot about the difference between like a Rebel Wilson and like a wow, completely gone from my brain, Spy, Melissa McCarthy, and like how they address their fatness in such different ways. And then you look at like like a Queen Latifah or like any number of like a Nicole Byer and how they address their fatness and like all these different intersections of how the sexiness or confidence comes across as brave, which I also find really frustrating. Oh, I jinxed with the chat because we both were talking about Nicole Byer at the same time. But like,
say what?
The chat and I are on the same wavelength, which I love. But like, I do find that such an interesting like cross section.
So then on an intersectional front, like I remember a couple of years ago, Kenan Thompson saying that, and I may be misquoting, so chat, let me know if I am, that Black women were not regulars on SNL because if they were ready to be, they would be, I think was the quote.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And it's sort of like how then, like, as a fat Black woman in comedy, do you feel like the intersection of those things affects
for me, I've always felt I've had to be 3 times as ready as anybody else. I got to be more ready because I'm a woman. I got to be more ready because I'm Black, and I got to be more ready because I'm fat. And like, fat interacts with woman differently in comedy than like fat interacts with Black sometimes in my experience. I sort of when I was doing, so I was a touring actor with the Second City, and I eventually became a director at the Second City. I was doing that when the pandemic shutdown hit, but I was sort of able to split it sort of into, I was a fat woman and I was Black, and like those were kind of the things that I had working against me. And like the fat woman stuff did one thing and the Black stuff did another thing. But in my experience, any Black comedian that you will talk to, any Black woman comedian that you will talk to, has had to be, and I have had to be 3 times as ready, 3 times as good as anybody to be seen as an equal, to be seen as even slightly below equal. And like, you know, the amount of things that I would see from white, when I was teaching also, so my white castmates, my white male castmates, my white male students, white men that I would have in ensembles when I was a director, they were not walking in as ready as my my Black actors, my women actors, my fat actors. Like those white guys were walking in lazy, like they just were. You know, I had to have conversations about being off book with white men only. I had to have a conversation about being off book with a Black actor once. Like that just wasn't a thing. And I think there is a assumption that there's like a gap in our knowledge as Black performers, that we have to like, a lot of the that fellowship that I did at Second City, a lot of fellowships, those kind of things that exist, operate on the assumption that there's a gap in the knowledge excuse me, of people of color coming into comedy spaces, rather than, are we seeing the knowledge they are coming in with? Like, are we prepared? So, and what those things tend to be, and what they have been in my experience and other people's experience, they are teach you how to be with the white people seminars. And there isn't the same effort to be like, here's the set of references and structures and tropes that you might have. Let's sharpen them.
Ooh.
It's let's teach you the white references. This is like a thing that I had people that went through at Second City. Never happened to me, but friends of mine, they would go to speech therapy. They would say, you have a lisp, you have a speech impediment, something's going on, we can't. And they would get to the class and it was learn how to talk like a white person class.
Wow.
And there were people friends of mine that were like, oh, I have a speech impediment. And my younger brother had one for a while. But it's like, so my friend was like, I know what speech therapy classes are. That was not speech therapy class. Like, I've been through those. They are teach you how to talk like a white person class. And I see people in the chat talking about of like, you have to, like, certain theaters have their style, they have their whatever, but those classes weren't, let's learn our style, our trademark thing. It was like, let's teach you what Shakespeare is so you can do improvised Shakespeare things. Or let's teach you, like, you're going to have to know, like, these playwrights. And they were all white playwrights, because that would be the suggestions that you would get. And I remember being an improv student and wanting to take suggestions of stuff that I knew. And like when my family and friends would come, they would throw out stuff that we knew, and we had to like have conversations as a cast of like, can we take this suggestion if Allie's the only Black person? Or it was like, I don't know what that is, that feels racist. I remember someone wanted to do, I gave a suggestion that we were in rehearsal of Blaxploitation. It's a genre. It has its own tropes. It has its own markers. It has its own style. But our coach was like, I don't think we can do that. I think that's racist. Because they didn't know what it was. And it had Black in it. And I was giving the suggestion for my white castmates. But it's like, the white person in the Blaxploitation has a certain role.
Absolutely.
There's the tropes where the man is sitting by himself, planning on the chalkboard. Like, those things exist. But that knowledge isn't valued in the same way that I'm like, I want to do a Blaxploitation thing. But so a lot of times so I wonder if when Keenan said that, to come back around, if the
Beautiful.
Black women they were seeing weren't playing the game, and weren't giving the white people what they want. So in his estimation, they weren't ready.
Right. And I have to say that, like, to make Kenan Thompson, who was the only Black member of Saturday Night Live for a very long time, sort of like responsible for the behavior of the Saturday Night Live with one comment is like bullshit. And
Right.
I'm not trying to do that at all. But like,
so like that, if someone had told him, so like imagine a white person told him, we see all, because at a certain point, he also said, I'm not going to dress and drag anymore. He's like, we
Right.
need to find somebody, because that was their fix.
yes.
And they had another cast member, Jay Farrow, who was very muscular, and they were like, we can't put him in drag because it doesn't look right. But Kenan is a big person, so you can cinch some fat. You can't cinch like a muscular person, right?
Yep.
And so like, I wonder if somebody in charge saw a bunch of Black women, thought they ain't ready, because they're really saying they're doing their own thing. They're not doing our thing. Said it to Kenan, and then he just said it. That's
Right.
my most charitable
Yes,
version of the quote.
Absolutely. Right. He was receiving wrong information.
Right.
And yeah. And ran with it.
Because also you look at Kenan Thompson, he's been performing sketch since he was a teen, a
Yeah.
preteen.
Yeah.
And like,
and he knows a lot of Black women who were ready. Like there's no way.
he knows a lot of people, but also like the level of experience that he had stepping onto SNL compared to somebody else. He had decades of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had to be more ready than somebody else.
He must have been ready then. Yeah.
Yeah, he could have done SNL when he was 15.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
He was the lead on a sitcom.
He was the lead on like 2 shows before
Yes.
he became SNL.
With his
That doesn't
name on
happen
it.
to anyone. No one had like the depth of resume
No.
that dude had coming on.
No, nobody's ever come on SNL with that kind of experience.
So we are starting to near the end of our show, but we do ask.
Oh my God.
I know, time is a circle.
So much
Like
stuff.
6 minutes left. Holy shit.
I mean, it's fine. But we do ask a series of questions of all of our guests. And so before
Yeah.
we go, I wanted to kind of not run through that. Like, we can take our time. Like, there's not like, we won't get shut down at 10, like 11. That's not how it works. We can talk as long as we like. But, you know, at the same time,
Someone comes in and turns the light off.
no
and
one's like,
yeah.
no, you're done streaming. In fact, I'm producing, so I can do whatever the hell I want.
Right.
Magic. But I wanted to kind of go through our questions with you too, because I also think that like a lot of what we're talking about in value, and I love the idea of kind of, this was a thing I started to implement, is like, I love having like a few questions that everybody answers that like level sets, so that at the end we all kind of feel where everybody comes from. So the first one, I know we talked a little bit about this before the show started, but like, how do you identify in terms of like your body, and is there a way that you specifically do not identify?
I say fat, I say plus size. I don't like full figured. It just sounds very old fashioned.
Yes.
And then like curvy is one of those things of like that that's a weapon. Like we can use it as a weapon, and I don't need to my body doesn't need to be a weapon at all times.
Yeah. I mean, obviously agreed, but
Yeah.
100%.
so this is my favorite question, and it's the reason that I wanted to make sure we got to it. And this is full credit to Ashley, because she asked it I would say she asked this question on our first show ever, and it like changed my life. But how has being fat added value to your life experience?
Ooh. So one thing is like, because I take up space, I've learned that I have to take up space, and like no one's gonna do that for me. You learn like you have to learn what works for you. In like being a fat person, you have to figure out like, this works for me, this doesn't, and that might be clothes shopping. It might be like with doctors or medical professionals, or it's like in sex and relationships. Like you have to figure out what works for you. So I feel that I am more independent as a result, because I know stuff isn't built for me, so I got to build my own stuff. And then I think it has made me appreciate like the things. It's sort of like really appreciate like my body is a vessel for my soul. So I have to take care of my body in the same, and I have to take care of my soul. Like it teaches you to like, you have to take care of yourself and be gentle on yourself. And I think once you accept your fatness, you're able to be gentle on yourself in a lot of ways that I think people that are striving for thinness don't always exhibit. I see like my skinny friends be really hard on themselves, be really mean to themselves. But the women I know that have accepted fatness as like a positive trait or even as a neutral trait are very gentle and kind and take care of themselves in a different way, because we're not seeing our body as something to fight all the time. It's something to take care of and to be precious with.
Yeah. Just a very like big sense of self.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
got me emotional.
Oh.
I just, that question makes me like emotional every time I think about it. And I had never, until Ashley had asked that question of Fancy Feast on our first episode, I'd never ever thought of it as like, what is the positive of like, what value? So it's something that I think that like, it's one of those questions that I sit down with a lot. And so I like to make sure we ask, because I hope that it also can add to the viewers in chat. And there's a value add. It's not just a thing that you overcome.
Yeah. And I think also just being able to see it as like, once I was able to say like, I'm fat the same way people say like, I'm tall, I have red hair, I like, you know, I need glasses. Like I will never not need glasses. Right. That is one of the, like, wearing glasses is a disability we have decided we're going to take care of. Right? Like there's a lot of disabilities, there's a lot of like, you know, being like not neurotypical that we've decided like we don't take care of, that we just won't fix. And there's a glasses store on every major shopping street, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if I just accept of like my fatness is something I cannot change, it is a thing that I live with and that's just who I am, then I can like dress it up. And it's like, then there should be a fat person store on every shopping street. If we have glasses.
And also, like, nobody beyond the age of 6 thinks that you can make fun of someone in any sort of effective way for wearing fucking glasses.
Yeah.
Like, there's no value in it. Like, as soon as
Right.
they're like, hey, 4 eyes, and you're like, yes, I wear glasses, then they're like,
I've never been called 4 eyes.
Like,
I've had glasses since the 1st grade. I've never had someone be like 4 eyes, because it's something we decided is fine.
yeah,
I got teased for it, but I also
hot in glasses, so like,
yeah, there's
Yeah.
that. I got teased for it, but I also was wearing like if we're talking about me in 4th grade, it wasn't a great time for me because I definitely was wearing like, I had a unibrow. I had bifocals, which I don't wear now. Why did I need bifocals?
Yeah.
I had Molly, like from American Girl doll, like Molly glasses. But I also had a retainer that had
like
spikes
they were
on it.
Sally, Jesse, Raphael. Kind
oh, the big red ones.
of. My vision is so bad that I had like big glasses, and then I had braces. I had headgear that I had to wear at night. I had little hooks that came out my mouth. So when I smiled, I'd be like, ha ha, and I was like that. And I had to take my hooks down. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
I had the
been
retainer with
firing your
spikes
teeth
because
for,
I
like, the
had
past
a
hour
lisp.
because your teeth look fucking bad.
Yeah, your teeth are great.
I mean, there was a lot of dental work.
Like, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely struggled with the lisp. So I had, and it still comes at times. So like I had spikes. It was a whole thing to like hold my tongue back so I wouldn't Oh my God. But yeah, so we have like, just, you know, as we near the end of the show, like we are a pop culture show. So something we also like to talk about a little bit is like how pop culture has affected you in terms of like how you've seen yourself in pop culture, or the way that it affects like how you move around in the world. I guess we talk about it a little because you write for pop culture. like you are in pop culture now. But is there something that like specifically you wanted to like touch on in terms of your experiences, like how it with your fatness and pop culture, and could be positive, could be negative, whatever floats your boat.
I mean, and I when we were like doing press for WakanaCon, I would talk about it a lot of like when we would play video games or a board game or dress up or something, I had the choice of like I could be the black character or the woman character, because there's never like a black woman, like very 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 rarely. If it's like a fighting game, it's like I'm gonna be Chun-Li because she's a girl, like I like that. But Black Panther was one of the first things where I saw in that like nerd space of like there are multiple black women, they're all very different, they all like represent different strengths, and now I get to pick who I like identify with the most based on like their personality rather
Shuri?
than.
Sorry, I love
it
Shuri.
is Shuri. But I'm Shuri. It's funny, I'm Shuri because I'm a little sister. Like I was like, oh,
Yeah, I'm a little sister too.
I was like,
Yeah,
same.
I've never seen that kind of like a brother sister that reminded me of me and my brother, and like I've always had him as like the nerdy character. So I was a Sailor Mercury. I was like, oh, this is my thing. But so I feel like there's a lot of things that looking at pop culture and trying to find things to identify with and understand. There's a lot of like this is happening by default. Like I gotta watch this thing because there's the one show with the black people on it. And like I can't. When I was a kid, there was a lot of like Moesha, the Parkers. Like there were a lot of things that I could watch, but it didn't feel always like these are real. These are fully realized people. This show is like a message show. Like there's a lot of other things happening, and so I remember feeling that feeling of like I'm watching a lot of things by default. I'm identifying with things by default. I'm identifying with a character that doesn't represent all of me. So as things have changed and there's more of an understanding of like we gotta represent fat people. We can have fat people that like just exist, that their fatness is like never the thing that we talk about. And even like I remember with like Lizzo just being like, holy shit, like this would have changed my life as a child. Like I would have gotten to where I am so much faster if Lizzo existed. And I remember I've had a lot of conversations with my family about the way that they handled weight and how that impacted me. And I introduced Lizzo to my mom. She's going through a difficult time, so I was like, you should listen to this. And then we went to go see Lizzo, and she was like, this part's making me emotional. She was like, the way that I talked to you about your body when you were a kid is because I never had Lizzo. And she was like, I realized that like that was my stuff, or a combination of other people in our lives stuff that she became an enforcer of. But she was like, we didn't have Lizzo. Like there was nothing like that. There was no one like that, no space like that. But so like having that pop culture thing like there's other things that were a bridge to where we've come to a better understanding of each other and our bodies, but like to have a figure in pop culture like also be that bridge is wild, and I don't think would have been possible when I was a kid. And the fat women that were presented, fat black women particularly when I was a kid in the 90s and the 2000s, like there was a narrow range of acceptable bodies, even for those fat women to be seen as sexy, seen as desirable. Even someone like Missy Elliott, she dressed really oversized and you never saw her body, like that was not part of her, or whatever like fat figure, they were losing weight. So like Oprah was always going up and down in weight. And like when she was big, she looked like me. She looked like the women in my family. She was skinny. She didn't look like me anymore. And I remember when Anna Nicole Smith died, my mom went, she was one of us. Like she was a big girl. Like we lost the big girl icon, like there just weren't sort of those people that didn't have a fraught relationship with their body, that were positive, wholly positive, or open about when it wasn't positive, didn't and like didn't blame fatness for their life not being where they wanted it to be, which I think is also like a big part of like pop culture narratives about fatness, is like if the fat girl just loses weight, her life can begin. And I hear that a lot, even from my friends that are thin, that want to lose weight. And I'm like, you're smaller than me. Like, go do it. You can go do it. No one's stopping you.
Right, just do the thing.
Yeah, you're a size 8 white lady. The world is made for you.
This is yours.
It's yours. But so I think, that they're just, that there's a wider range of people to identify with, that the conversations and images we see of fatness are not striving toward thinness, and like that the idea of like I'm fat and I'm fine is like a thing didn't exist. And so being able to see that and point out where it doesn't, because now I'm in a position where I can point out where that doesn't exist, like on The Bachelor, Real Housewives, or in any other kind of work that I'm doing. And so just being able to be like, we all know, if someone would say there's no black people on this show, there's a problem, right? I hope one day we'll be able to be like, there's no fat people on this show, that's a problem.
Or there's only one fat person on this show,
right?
That is supposed to be monolithic for all fat people,
right? And I'm like, everybody got at least 2 fat friends. You got a fat friend at your job and a fat friend you grew up with. Like, everybody got 2. We out there. So like, there should not be a show where there's just one fat person, like.
Yeah, I can't tell you what it is, but I taught something last week where like it was me and another fat character at the table, and we were not related in any way, and there was no conversation that had to happen about us both being in a room on a set together. And it was so exciting. I was like, I've been working for 16 years. This has never happened before.
And it's wild. Like, there are lots of, I'm in rooms with more fat people than non-fat people, because that's how like rooms work.
Right.
So
well, that's
like,
how people work.
Yes, that's
right?
how people exist.
There are more fat people than not fat people.
Yes, and
but in America,
people gotta be able to call themselves fat and not have a big capital F feeling about it. And then once you're able to do that, then you're probably going to be able to be happy and proud of it. And then we'll be able to have people that like want to be seen and included and want to have inclusion. It's just another like axis to have inclusion on. But we don't have a language to talk about it.
Well, that feels like an amazing place for us to do the end of the show. As much as I think we could talk forever. You're more than invited back anytime. You are an absolute gem. Thank you so much for coming on our show. And
thank you so much for having me. This is a blast.
Allie, you're awesome.
Do you have anything that you want to plug? We have her coffee link. You can buy her a cup of coffee to thank her for being on our show today. Highly recommended. And WT Flank steak
Yep.
for Twitter and Instagram. We were going to talk to you about steak and we didn't even get to it.
And I wanted to talk about steak restaurants.
Goddamn. But please, if you have anything to plug, let us know.
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at WT Flank Steak. I'm recapping The Bachelor right now for Vulture, so you can go check those out. And then Last Week Tonight with John Oliver's on Sundays.
Great. And then for the co-op, we have a ton of stuff happening this weekend. If you didn't watch, there was an amazing episode of Show and Tell right before this that you can still watch. That was at 8:00 about oh my god, my brain just died. About World's Fairs, and it was so cool and interesting. And so you can still watch that tomorrow. Tons of stuff. There's an episode of In It to Vin It, the Vin Diesel show. They'll be talking about Roundabout Roundabout guys. Oh gosh, somebody tell me which one it was. I'm going to hear about this now. Maddie has her first episode of the live theater show, Knockaround Boys, I think. Okay, thank you, chat. And then I've obviously not watched that movie in a long time. There's the first episode of Maddie's theater show, which we're super excited about. And finally, tomorrow is an episode of Trollopism with Cheyenne talking about sex work and pop culture. Sunday, I have an episode, as always, of Let's Talk Pop. I have no idea what I'm talking about, so get ready for me to figure that out by Sunday. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. As always, you can follow us on everything at Pop Culture Co-op, which is what we're called. We're on everything. You can watch us on YouTube too, but thanks everybody for tonight. Have a great time. Ooh, something just weird happened, but that's okay because we're done. And it's the big time.
Big time.
The big time.
Big time.
The big time.
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 Big time. Big time.
It's the big time.
Big time. Big time.
The big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time. Big time.
She said to me, you know, she says, you have such a pretty face. Do you enjoy being fat? I said, I worked very hard at it. It took me a long time to get this way.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
Big time.
Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time. Big time.
The big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Big time.
It's the big time.